Hello everyone, Jeff here with another video update on Antilia. Now, if you weren't following me on Discord or on the Patreon page, unfortunately I fell a bit ill for a couple weeks there, so there was about 2 weeks where no real progress was made on Antilia, but I'm back to work on Antilia this week, feeling pretty good. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I've been working on for the Canvas editor. Now, in our last video, I was working on porting over the toy Canvas editor into our simpler Antilia editor. And I suggested that there needed to be more work done to get to the point where the tool can be used for texturing the Lantros building tiles. This week I continued on that project, and you may notice a difference in how the editor now appears from how it did in the last video. I won't cover all those changes in depth, as you'll almost certainly see this editor in future videos whenever I need to work on textures for meshes. But some of the highlights, we'll just cover some of the highlights here. These include a new layout system, which allows these multiple viewports in different arrangements, and they can individually be set to a canvas, one of the canvases, or a 3D mesh preview. I also added support for multiple independent canvases, so when you load a file, it can actually have independent textures. And this is mostly for cases where you have a mesh that involves submeshes. It happens pretty frequently where you want multiple textures on a single 3D mesh. So this editor will allow that and make it real easy to do that in the future. So preview meshes can now be set up and saved in the canvas as part of the file. And whenever you do have a 3D preview mesh set up in your canvas, when you view a canvas that's used that way, the UV space, there's kind of like this wireframe that automatically appear to show how the UV texture is wrapped onto the 3D mesh, which is something artists kind of understand. I don't know if those of you who aren't familiar with 3D graphics may not quite understand that, but you can almost certainly see, looking in the video here, you're going to see these kind of blue wireframes, and that just helps us when painting textures to know what part of the mesh goes, onto the 3D image or onto the 2D image. So this is all still a work in progress. I'm currently reworking the way selections work. A lot of this kind of broke when I added the support for multiple views. So next week, I'd like to get back to focusing on creating the Lantros building tiles. But as I do, I'll continue to make improvements to this tool, basically just as I need. I don't want to spend the whole week working on this again, but I will, as I need to make improvements to the tool, I'll continue to just kind of in the background fix things and add features and add especially brush rendering strokes and a wider selection of brushes just as I need. This week, Abigail has also been working on some meshes for Antilia, including some furnishings and objects to add light to the building interiors. I'm trying to kind of we're moving in the direction of having the building system working. So I've been looking into just anything I can do to add more objects to Antilia. And in some cases that may involve buying some temporary assets off like some of these online asset stores. I don't really like using asset store resources, but I think as temporary meshes, or in some cases, some things are just so generic, I think that could work and actually help move the project forward in a way that saves time and doesn't have me spending my time making 50 rocks or something really monotonous like that honestly doesn't add a lot of value to Antilia to spend too much time on certain objects like rocks and whatnot. Now, one thing that's really been on my mind this week is how do we ensure Antilia has good artistic direction? I'm a programmer, I'm not necessarily an art director, but it's something that has to be done to make sure Antilia looks good. Making sure that the models that we create and the textures, when we put them in a scene, they need to look like they belong together, that they were designed by the same people in the same culture. So it's something I've been putting a lot of thought into. I'd like to set up a development team meeting later this week. If you support the project on Patreon, of course, you'll get an invite to listen on that. But we're going to discuss that in more detail and hopefully get some good rules in place to ensure that that's happening. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I guess we'll see you next time. A special thanks goes to this month's Patreon supporters. If you'd like to support the project, you can do so by visiting www.patreon.com/Antilia.